My ex-wife left me for another man, but now she wants alimony because he dumped her. A year ago, my world was turned upside down when my wife of 7 years, Jessica, told me she wanted a divorce. She didn't beat around the bush. She confessed. She had fallen in love with another man, a wealthy entrepreneur named Alan. According to her, Alan offered her the lifestyle she deserved, something I, as a middle-class engineer, could never provide. She told me she wasn't happy and wanted to chase her dreams. It was devastating, but I didn't beg or try to change her mind. If she thought she'd be happier elsewhere, who was I to stop her? The divorce process was messy. Jessica fought hard for as much money as she could get, even though we didn't have kids. She wanted the house, half of my savings, and even spousal support, claiming she had put her career on hold for our marriage. I countered that she had voluntarily quit her job years ago, not to support me, but because she didn't like working. In the end, the court awarded her half of our savings and some personal property, but I managed to keep the house and avoided alimony. After the divorce, she moved in with Alan, flaunting their extravagant lifestyle on social media. Fancy dinners, exotic vacations, expensive gifts. It was all there, and it was like she wanted me to see it. I'll admit it hurt for a while, but I focused on healing and rebuilding my life. Fast forward to last month. Out of the blue, I received a text from Jessica. "Hey, can we talk? I need your help." I ignored it. She sent a few more messages over the next week, asking if we could meet up, but I didn't respond. Then, she showed up at my door. She looked different. Tired, disheveled, nothing like the glamorous woman she had been with Alan. Reluctantly, I let her in to hear her out. She told me Alan had dumped her. Apparently, he found someone younger and moved on without a second thought. Jessica had no job, no savings. She'd spent her half of ours within months, and nowhere to go. She tried to guilt me, saying that as her ex-husband, I should feel some responsibility to help her get back on her feet. But the kicker? She's now threatening legal action to demand alimony, claiming that she's struggling to survive, while I'm comfortable in the house we once shared. She's arguing that the lifestyle she had during our marriage is something I'm obligated to maintain for her, even though she was the one who left me for another man. I've already spoken to my lawyer, and luckily, since the divorce decree didn't include alimony, she has little ground to stand on. But the audacity of her demands has left me reeling. I worked hard to pick up the pieces of my life after she walked out, and now she's trying to drag me back into her mess. As frustrating as this situation is, it's also oddly satisfying to see the tables turn. Jessica thought the grass was greener on the other side, but now she's realizing the consequences of her choices. I'm not going to let her manipulate me or disrupt the life I've rebuilt. Update 1. After my original post, I thought that ignoring Jessica would be the end of it. I assumed she'd realize that her threats and attempts to guilt me into helping her weren't going to work, but I underestimated her determination, or maybe her desperation. A few days after our awkward encounter, I received a letter from her lawyer. In it, she formally requested alimony, claiming that she was entitled to support because our marriage hindered her earning potential, and that I was enjoying a comfortable lifestyle thanks to the foundation we built together. It was laughable, considering she left me for someone else, but I wasn't about to take it lightly. I immediately contacted my lawyer, who reassured me that Jessica didn't have much of a case. The divorce decree was clear. Alimony wasn't awarded at the time of our separation, and there were no significant changes in circumstances that would justify revisiting the matter now. Still, the mere fact that she was pursuing this avenue irritated me to no end. In the meantime, Jessica began a smear campaign against me among our mutual friends and on social media. She painted herself as a victim, saying that I was refusing to help her out of spite and that I was punishing her for moving on with her life. Some people bought into her sob story, messaging me to say things like, "It wouldn't hurt to be a little generous," or, "She's clearly struggling, can't you help her out a bit?" But most of our mutual friends knew the full story. One friend, Claire, Even called me to vent about how Jessica had tried to rope her into this pity party. According to Claire, Jessica had been sobbing about how Alan had used her and discarded her, leaving her with nothing. She claimed that she'd only left me because she thought Alan would provide a better life for her, and that she regretted her decision every day. Claire, who never liked Jessica much to begin with, told her point blank that she'd made her bed and now had to lie in it. Jessica's desperation escalated when she started showing up at my workplace. The first time, she waited for me in the parking lot. I told her to leave, but she broke down in tears, begging me to at least give her some money to help her get back on her feet. She claimed she was looking for a job, but that no one wanted to hire someone who had been out of the workforce for so long. The second time, she actually walked into the building and asked to speak with me. My coworkers were confused and concerned, especially since she made a scene when security escorted her out. My boss even called me into his office afterward to ask if everything was okay. It was humiliating, and I knew I needed to put an end to this once and for all. My lawyer helped me draft a cease and desist letter, warning Jessica that her harassment needed to stop immediately, or I would pursue legal action. I also blocked her on every platform and told my friends and coworkers to let me know if she tried to contact them about me. As of now, things have been quiet, but I'm not holding my breath. Jessica has shown that she's willing to go to extreme lengths to get what she wants, and I wouldn't be surprised if she has more tricks up her sleeve. Update 2. I thought the cease and desist letter would finally make Jessica back off, but I underestimated just how persistent and entitled she could be. A week after I sent the letter, I found a letter in my mailbox. At first, I thought it was another formal response from her lawyer, but when I opened it, I realized it was a handwritten note from Jessica herself. In the letter, she poured out her remorse. She apologized for leaving me, saying that her decision was a mistake driven by greed and foolishness. She claimed she was blindsided by Alan's betrayal and had nowhere else to turn. While the note was dripping with self-pity, it was also manipulative. She wrote things like, "I thought I could count on you to at least have compassion for someone you once loved," and, "If the roles were reversed, I would never let you suffer like this." I didn't respond, of course, but the letter left a bad taste in my mouth. It was clear Jessica wasn't giving up anytime soon. A few days later, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered, and sure enough, it was Jessica. She started crying almost immediately, saying she had nowhere else to go. She claimed that she had been evicted from her apartment and was sleeping in her car. She begged me to let her stay in the guest room, just for a little while until she could get back on her feet. I told her no, firmly but politely, and reminded her that she needed to respect the boundaries I had set. But Jessica wasn't having it. She launched into a tirade about how heartless I was, accusing me of abandoning her when she was at her lowest. She even threw in some guilt-tripping lines like, "I gave you the best years of my life and this is how you repay me?" At that point, I hung up and blocked the number. Unfortunately, the drama didn't end there. Jessica somehow managed to contact my parents. She called my mom and spun a sob story about how I was being cruel and refusing to help her in her time of need. My mom, who is the kindest and most empathetic person I know, actually felt bad for her. She called me and said, "I know she hurt you, but maybe you could give her a little help just to get her through this rough patch." I had to explain everything: how Jessica left me for Alan, how she drained her half of our savings, and how she was now trying to manipulate me into supporting her financially. My mom was shocked and apologized for even entertaining Jessica's story. Thankfully, my parents are on my side now and have blocked her too. The final straw came when Jessica showed up at my house again, this time with a suitcase in tow. She stood on my porch and refused to leave, claiming she had nowhere else to go. I didn't even open the door. I called the police and reported her for trespassing. When the officers arrived, Jessica tried to play the victim, telling them I was her ex-husband and that she just needed a place to stay. But I showed them the cease and desist letter and explained the harassment I had been dealing with. They told Jessica to leave and warned her that if she came back, she could face legal consequences. Since then, I haven't heard from her directly, but I've learned through mutual friends that she's still trying to play the victim. She's telling anyone who will listen that I abandoned her in her time of need and that I'm a cold, heartless man. Thankfully, most people see through her lies, but it's still frustrating to deal with the fallout. At this point, I'm just glad I stood my ground. Jessica made her choices, and now she has to live with the consequences. I refuse to let her drag me back into her chaos. Update 3. After Jessica's failed attempt to stay at my house and the trespassing incident, I thought things might finally settle down. Unfortunately, I underestimated just how relentless she could be when her back was against the wall. A few weeks later, I received a notification that Jessica had officially filed a motion in court to modify our divorce agreement. She was claiming financial hardship and requesting alimony, citing that her current circumstances made it impossible for her to support herself. This time, I didn't panic. I had already anticipated this possibility and had all the documentation ready. My lawyer and I went through every detail of our divorce agreement, which explicitly stated that neither party would owe alimony unless there were significant changes in income or financial status. Since Jessica had willingly left the marriage and blown through her share of the assets, she had no grounds to demand more from me. On the day of the court hearing, Jessica arrived looking disheveled and defeated, a stark contrast to the confident, glamorous woman she used to be. When it was her turn to speak, she painted a picture of herself as a victim of circumstances, blaming Alan for leaving her and claiming I had left her no choice but to turn to the courts for help. When it was my turn, my lawyer presented clear evidence that contradicted her narrative. We showed the court how Jessica had chosen to leave the marriage, taken a substantial portion of our savings, and spent it on her luxurious lifestyle with Alan. We also highlighted her social media posts that documented her extravagant spending during that time. Additionally, we presented the cease and desist letter and police report from her trespassing incident to illustrate the pattern of harassment. The judge was not impressed with Jessica's arguments. In fact, they reprimanded her for wasting the court's time and advised her to focus on finding a job and rebuilding her life instead of relying on her ex-husband to bail her out. The motion was denied, and Jessica left the courtroom visibly humiliated. I thought this would be the end of it, but Jessica's antics weren't quite over. Few days after the court hearing, a mutual friend reached out to warn me that Jessica was spreading malicious rumors about me. She was telling people in our social circle that I had emotionally abused her during our marriage and that I was refusing to help her out of spite. At first, I was furious. Jessica's lies were a blatant attempt to ruin my reputation, and I couldn't believe how far she was willing to go. But then I realized something. Her actions were a reflection of her desperation, not my character. I decided not to engage or stoop to her level. Instead, I focused on living my life and letting my actions speak for themselves. As time passed, Jessica's attempts to tarnish my reputation lost steam. People started to see through her lies, especially as more of the truth came out about how she had left me for Alan and squandered her share of our savings. Mutual friends began distancing themselves from her, and eventually she faded into the background. Meanwhile, I've been thriving. I recently got a promotion at work, which came with a significant pay raise. I've also started dating someone new, a wonderful woman named Claire who is kind, supportive, and everything Jessica wasn't. Claire knows all about my past with Jessica, and she's been a rock for me through all of this. One of the most satisfying moments came a few weeks ago when I bumped into a mutual friend who told me that Jessica had finally found a job. Apparently, she's working at a local retail store, and while it's not the luxurious lifestyle she once flaunted, it's at least a step toward independence. I don't feel pity or anger toward Jessica anymore. What I feel is indifference. She made her choices, and now she has to live with them. As for me, I'm finally free. Free from the drama, the manipulation, and the emotional baggage she brought into my life. Looking back, I'm grateful for the lessons this experience taught me. It showed me the importance of standing up for myself, setting boundaries, and not letting anyone take advantage of me. Most importantly, it taught me that moving on and finding happiness is the best revenge. So that's where things stand now. Life is good and I'm excited for what the future holds. As for Jessica, well, I wish her the best, but from a very safe distance. What do you think? Would you have handled things differently, or do you think I made the right choices in dealing with Jessica? Let me know.